Hello, welcome to Grab the Mic Live. This is a live series of conversations with wonderful people from across the not-for-profit sector who are podcasting and doing brilliant things with podcasting, and chats about how it's made an impact, the challenges they faced, even down to the kit that they use. So I'm Vic Elizabeth Turnbull, and I'm from Mike Media. It's a social enterprise that helps good eggs to share their stories through good quality audio. Lots of good in there. And Grab the Mic is all about inspiring you to grab the mic and start podcasting as well. And every month or so, I invite guests to chat about their podcast with us. So a big hello if you're watching us on Twitter, if you're watching us on LinkedIn, or if you're watching us on our YouTube catch-up. So I'm dead chuffed today to have Nickala Torkington, and she is the director and co-founder of a brilliant social enterprise called Flourish Together CIC. So without further ado, Nickala, it's such a joy to welcome you to Grab the Mic. I just want to ask, how's your head this morning? Tell us what happened last night.
Oh, well, I've got it here, so I will for anybody who cares. We're very proud and very shocked and honoured, if I can get it past the camera in the right way, to have won one of these beauties. We've followed, supported and been linked to Northern Power Women, run by a lady called Simone Roche, for some time, but we're a winner. I won Levelling Up Leader. So yes, thankfully the hangover has been kind. I did have to dash off and smart myself up for this. I'd not realised we were being video recorded. It's all about the audio, when it comes to a podcast. So yes, feeling good.
Yeah, massive congratulations. Hugely well deserved. Hopefully, fingers crossed, the hangover is not in the post, because sometimes it can sneak up on you, can't they?
I'll be hair of the dog by lunchtime, but it is lunchtime. So yeah, I've got a friend over later who'll keep me topped up.
Amazing, great work. So give us, if someone's watching now thinking, well, what is Flourish Together CIC? Give us the lowdown.
What do we say? So we're a social enterprise. We're a pay it forward consultancy and network, and we support all sorts of social enterprises, charities, different kinds of organisations that are seeking to create social change across all sectors, really. And we reinvest our profits to support women change makers. We really try to unlock the potential and the power of very diverse women to lead change they see needed in communities, because we think women make great innovators, entrepreneurs and leaders, and the more of them get to find their spirit and their passion and their route to doing it and the route to earning a living through it, the better in our lives.
And so you've helped and supported a big fat amount of women. How many?
Oh, it's well over 1,000 now. I mean, I've worked in the sort of voluntary community social enterprise world for getting on for 25 years nearly. And throughout my career, I've supported over 3,000 people to set up social enterprises. And a good third of those have been through Flourish now. And we love it.
Oh, and I have to say that Mike Media was one of those organisations. So I think back in 2017, I had the murmurings of wanting to start my own business.
Still there. We're very good talent scouts. You know what I didn't say is we were talent scouts, and we find brilliant talent with great ideas. And you absolutely, it was fantastic. You walked through our doors, and we don't usually encourage people to quit their jobs, but you were one of the few where we're like, do it now.
Yeah, you definitely helped sow that seed, and also helped me sow the seed of Mike Media. I remember a mentorathon, which is one of your annual events that helps support women who want to grow or sustain their or start a social enterprise, that you were like, what about doing podcasts for the third sector? And I parked the idea, being really honest with you, and then about 18 months later I went, actually that was a great idea.
And the one around impact and value measurement was another one. I'm like, just always trying to throw in, how can we help you make money at this, so you will you can do it, because it is hard, and nobody can live on fresh air, and there's got to be solid ways to make these podcasts work for you, for sure.
Absolutely. And I think what really struck me about Flourish is that it's welcoming. The advice flows abundantly, and there's all that
overwhelmingly. Sometimes we don't know when to rein it in.
Well, yeah, you've always got something going on. There's always something you can go to further your knowledge and skills with Flourish Together CIC. And I suppose that then is the essence of the podcast, isn't it? So tell me about the podcast and what stage were you at when you were like, podcast would be a great idea?
Well, it was all down to you. I wouldn't have really tried. I think there was yourself that we came across, and then there was a guy running this rock radio station that I was helping. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I think I was, well, people don't need to know my background particularly, but I was living through, particularly brutal divorce, trapped in night after night with like young 4-year-old. And I think I just needed something to keep myself busy, really. And I ended up starting to be curious about audio. Finally, post-COVID, we're now all a little bit more settled at seeing the sight of ourselves on a video, but just hearing your own voice back to you was a bit creaky and a bit oof at the time. And so building confidence to think about creating content was something that this radio station that I got involved with and others, we just thought, what could we do with this? Where could it take people? I feel like you have to walk the talk, and if I'd not learnt those skills myself, sometimes you can't pass them on to others, or you can't see other ways of using them or applying them to how your sector or your world works. And I think we definitely tried to take the best of different bits of things that we've come across and think, right, what might help our network, what might help people who are linked to what we do either learn or showcase themselves or amplify their voices through this stuff. But also, how might they learn? And I think you could tell me, Vic, because you've run it, but, having you involved in some of our Time to Grow programs and some of our other events, there's been hundreds of women now that have come on our programs that have gone on to get training from you, either through our programs or, through your own events. And there's a real ripple effect now of lots of people who are, getting on with this stuff and making a far better job of creating podcasts than perhaps we do. But we have a particular kind of format for them, which is probably a little bit different to some podcasts, because we always came about this at creating learning tools and resources as opposed to the kind of, shock and awe storytelling stuff. We can do that, and we could do that. But I think we started as a way of making our lives easier. And knowing, because we work with a lot of women who can't always get to our events, can't always get out and about, it was a combination of wanting to meet their needs and have people be able to listen in and recap on things. But also then through COVID, actually, that really shifted us into gear with you. And that's when I was looking back at, how do we do this? We'd already created a few podcasts at the time, out and about, and you coming out, following us around, recording these panel conversations. And I think our first legal structures and governance was a fantastic panel. It's had over 500 listens, that one. And then as COVID sort of hit, we created a lot of this content virtually, and that enabled us to sort of build our confidence with it and do so many more. I mean, we've only done a series of sort of 12 or so, but we've used this in so many ways and so many topics, really.
And it's that, I suppose it's a good point that you made just before, that Flourish, pre-pandemic and also throughout the pandemic and also continuing now, do lots and lots of engagement, lots of face-to-face, lots of online events. And sometimes, a lot of women, because as women, we have a lot of responsibilities that mean that we can't actually get to events. So having something that you can listen to back to at your own pleasure and leisure is really useful.
And we meet people all the time who've listened to a podcast and they get in touch with us. Or I'll have to confess, and this, Vic, I'm not a huge podcast listener. I feel like I don't have the time, or I haven't sort of trawled around to see what might I want to listen to. So I'm going to sneeze if I'm going to sneeze.
Oh, no.
And with the network that we've got, some of them do have the time. Or I think what we find is, because we work with quite a lot of early stage social entrepreneurs and change makers, they're going on this massive learning curve, and they need to hoover up as much information and knowledge as they can on how do I get started, where do I get support, who's done this before me that could tell me how to do this quickly or better, where do I get money, all these different things. And we haven't got the time always to handhold people as much as we might like. And, we do handhold people a lot, and we have all this support, but there's only so many hours in the day, and we're a very small team. So what we found we were able to do quite quickly, and we're still using this content now, even though it was perhaps recorded a year or two ago, is somebody rings me up and I've not got time to talk to somebody. I'll quickly find out who they are, what they're doing, and various things, or at an event, and I can just fire them a whole bunch of like podcasts and resources, and they can pick all this stuff up at their leisure. So rather than come on a program and not make the most of it, or if somebody's going to pay for my time for a day's consultancy support, get as much as you can done yourself, so that you're not, we're trying to save people time and money with our podcast, and that was something I hadn't expected at the time, that it would free up my life a little bit, provide support like remotely without even being there.
That is so vital as well. When we think about not-for-profit, social enterprises, charities, resource is valuable, isn't it? And so if we can think of ways that can help free up resource so we can do other things, then that's a bonus, isn't it?
It's definitely been one for us, and massively so. And I think our podcasts have done a few things. They've helped create tools and resources. They've really helped us with some of the storytelling. So whilst our podcast is almost a bit more like a magazine, with like chunks of different sort of content, there's a lot of storytelling in there. There's definitely trying to showcase talent and amplify unheard voices and unheard insights from everyday people, because we're a big believer that peer-to-peer learning is massive, and we try to take the fear and the mystique out of this stuff. And if you can hear someone with your accent, or somebody on a wavelength to you who's been there and done it, it's just instills confidence a lot quicker. And what we've also done with the podcast is, not in so many, but we've also brought funders and professionals in to, I guess, make them a little bit more accessible. And so we've had Heather Waters from NatWest, who is very hard to get hold of, and you wouldn't come across in your everyday life unless you're running something, and or you're at a big conference, or you're at Northern Power Women events. And she ran a session for us and talked to us all about crowdfunding and from her perspective. And we've had like Lucy Finley from SE Mark and different funders like Unlimited and others on panels talking about things from their perspective, to try and sort of take the fear and the mystique out of just picking up a phone or picking up an email and reaching out to these people, because they are human beings. So hopefully that's an element that we've been able to sort of factor into some. And the only other thought that I had when I was thinking, what are some of the benefits of this? We've used this, and this is something that you could do more. You might be doing more already, Vic. We found it really helpful to use podcasting as a tool to bring, this is going to sound really boring to people who aren't a geek like me on policy reports, but it brings policy reports to life. Policy reports are, I love gathering the data and pulling out new information and trying to come up with recommendations and things that could shift things better. And so when you're out and about and you're listening to your stakeholders or your community, or, somebody who's got something to say about something that's set them back and needs changing, those hearing it live in a very short, sharp, whether it's a podcast or little sound bites, really helped us when we did a policy report for the GMCA around recommissioning women's centres that 10GM and different people asked us to help with. And I think we've used audio content and a podcast as a way to just take the boringness out of boring policy reports. And do you know what was really good as well is policy reports get written, they get handed on to some big cheese. Do the recommendations ever get taken forward? Sometimes we were very lucky that actually within that work that we did, some of it was kind of peppered into the gender reducing gender-based violence type strategies that we have in Manchester now. But it means that you can hold on to the knowledge and you can still keep sharing it. So even if nothing's happening, or then people aren't taking it serious or taking something forward, you can keep reminding people of, this is what people said, this is why it's important. And it's not just words hidden in a drawer or hidden in a Dropbox somewhere. You've got that content to keep banging the drum, I suppose, about what needs to change. So that's something that we found helpful. And we probably need to go back and you sort of revisit some of the amazing information that and honesty that the communities will give, that they feel kind of fed up when nothing changes. At least if you can still keep their voices live and off the page and in the in the real world, then people listen, much more readily to that than they would ever go Googling for some, research report.
A good point on that as well is when we're looking at policy reports or we're looking at commissioning, that there's a level of consultation that's done that sometimes does sit on a black and white page, whereas capturing with audio, it's real people's voices.
Yeah, and it really boosts. I think it certainly, we're going about that method that we did. It boosted people's confidence and made them feel listened to and heard to some degree. And we've got that there. We can do more with it, and that is the other thing that we learned from you and from other people involved in this sort of media world, which we're not really part of. We just monkey around in, is repurposing content, and you create this stuff, but then it can be rehashed and reused and repackaged in different ways. And I don't think enough organizations make the time to do that cleverly or smartly, or they haven't got the hours in the day to sit and think, right, what have we already got and how can we reuse and repurpose this so that it saves us time and money, and we make the best use and make the most effective use of what we've created.
Yeah, I often say that as a lot of not-for-profits probably don't have to look far for content. And by God, you guys have got content coming out of your ears, haven't you? I mean, we'll talk about the future in a bit, but you've recently done, and you have been doing for the past 12 months, is the how-to festival. Lots and lots of people sharing their skills and knowledge from around everything, isn't it?
And that's just been a pilot, really. I don't know that that's been as successful as I would have liked. I think it's been successful enough, but I think the potential for something like that is pretty big, and nobody else has really cracked that as a thing yet. And like you say, we've got over 30-40 webinars on how to do all sorts, from health and well-being stuff to creative and digital skills to social enterprise development and how to get into politics and all sorts. And we just know so many amazing, interesting people, that why would we not try and short circuit the learning, bite-sized chunks of learning that just sparks someone's imagination or gives them that tip or that tool that unlocks the ability to just move forward. That's what it was all for. And like I said before about confidence, so many people have got amazing training and learning skills to give to their communities, and just because you've not got, teaching certificates or this or that, if you're able to package together what you need to say, you can put it across in the right way, and you can reach your audiences. There's amazing learning that people can get access to all the time. So audio, visual, and these sorts of tools that you've been sharing with us all are brilliant ways to just get that bite-sized learning out there, really, and get a different set of educators, more diverse educators, more real-world lived experience educators at the forefront of community-led learning, really, which is something we've been doing quite a bit in the last couple of years.
Yeah, so that's I think that's a call to action, isn't it, with our listener, our watcher, is that have a look at the content you've already got. I'm not touting for business here, but for example,
it's good. Not every penny.
But for example, in Nickala's How-To Festival, there's a whole mountain of content there that could be made into a podcast. And like as you said there, then the skills that you have in house, how can you is there ways to share that to help your beneficiaries or wider learn something as well? So like you say, we've got 12 episodes, very, very helpful practical stuff for your audience. So imposter syndrome, crowdfunding, problem solving, careers. I'm going to play a little snippet. We talked about using authentic experience-led voices, and it's a very tiny snippet from a episode that we did in episode 8, problem solving our way to a better future.
If there's one thing I would say to people who are maybe starting out launching, whatever it is they've had bubbling under for the past however many years as I have, is don't overstretch yourself. I found because it all took off really, really well, and I was absolutely buzzing, and my life itself away from that seems to have just drifted further and further out of reach. And it's something that I've had to really rein myself in a bit and gone, hang on, you still need some you time. So this weekend, while the sun's been playing out, I have done exactly that, and I've gone, no. And I'm sure by the time I go back Tuesday, I'll be feeling as fired up and full of energy for it all again. So, yeah, just look after you. Thank you.
So,
lovely Phoenix there from our First Time to Grow programme. So, yeah. Aww,
yeah.
and so sentimental.
Local voices, local women who are living and breathing social enterprise, or have just started social enterprise. So really utilising the network that you've got. Again, you don't have to look very far for content. You don't have to look very far for people to take part in your podcast. So a lot of the women that take part are not celebrities. Well, they're not celebrities. They're not CEOs. They're not, these pedestal leaders.
And there's a place where, but I'm like the opposite of that, really. I know I've just won a Glitzy Award and had to get dressed up last night, which, we're the opposite. I want to show that the brilliance of everyday people, it's like, that's, for me, that's where, the world is missing a trick.
I agree. So what's the impact been on the women that have been involved and having their voice shared this way?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So just referring back to that policy report, I mean, that had a big impact because various women, we supported them to lead their own conversations. And some of those women have gone on to really grow their own groups. We had various topics and themes that we were getting them to think about with their own groups, and it's definitely led them on to increased facilitation of their own work and their own stuff. We've got several women, like I say, who've been through different types of training around podcasting and have come up with their own podcasts now. I'm thinking of the likes of Sol Diaz, and she's Globe Wellbeing, and had. I was encouraging her to think, she works with multicultural women, and there's lots of different languages that they all speak, and they share their stories around the culture and heritage. And for me, they were ripe for, podcasting, really, because all the stories are there, which is fascinating. But for language learning, she's trying to teach them English. There's, using podcasts to help people learn a language or improve, their communication, I think. Was a great sort of tool for her, and she sort of tinkered with some of that. I think Asma, from Soul Sisters, I think they initially had some training from you before they then started, and they're now on, I don't know which episode, but they've been running a whole bunch of podcasts. I know you've known Eve Holt for years anyway, but I know Eve in her various roles has been using podcasting a lot. And Eve came on one of our podcasts, the careers one. She was like this poster girl for our careers in social change, and who knows whether being part of us was helping us sort of think, right, let's use this in different ways in our own community. I think once you hear these things and you see the way they could be used, I do think a lot of people have gone on and used them. In terms of impact, I know I've got people up and down the land who've used those podcasts as an additional learning tool to kind of bolster and boost what they need to know. And I would say certainly the ones around governance and legal structures, people can get very confused and very sort of nervous about how to set themselves up as an organisation or types of companies and so on. And that podcast just really takes the mystique out of it. And that's had a lot of listens that's then helped people sort of decide what they might want to be. And then there's a few podcasts around sort of income generation and show me the money and, basically, finding the cash to sustain what you're doing. And those have had a lot of listens, and they don't just sort of tell stories and give tips. That, they give people connections and links to follow up with. So even if people are, nothing to do with we're not linked immediately to our network, they've got access to hearing about that and finding out about local, regional and national forms of support that they can, pick up in their own right. So I'd like to, I believe it's something we've not done heaps of, is go back to them and say, what did you make of our podcast? I think that is one of the challenges with podcasting, is finding out the true impact of it. Because the tools and the sites and the this and the that, they can tell you how many people have listened. They can tell you more or less for how long. They can tell you where in the world or where in the country people are listening from. But in terms of, I'm a social value measurement specialist, so I'm a big like, well, so what? What then happened as a result? And yeah, we probably need to do more work, if I'm honest, to go and ask people. So you've listened to our podcast, how were they for you? What happened next? What did they do for you? But so yeah, job for the to-do list.
That's the hard bit, isn't it? Gathering so you got a lot of quantitative data from your stats on your podcast hosting platform, qualitative stuff, the actual, and then what happened stuff, which is tricky, and we've not got the answer to that. But it's good.
Well, we meet people that come to our events, and we constantly impact evaluate in our programs and things that we do. We've got hold of people, but podcasts sort of, setting your casting your net wide, and it's just part of that way of releasing things. I don't doubt that it's bringing people to our events, and it's giving people additional support and tools from remotely, because people do tell us that, but it's not something I've got a huge data set on. And maybe there's something the audio or podcasting world needs to help us to do, is figure out mapping our impact with these things.
Ooh, nice challenge there.
Yeah.
So let's cast our mind back to the beginning, because a lot of people say to me, I have not got the time to start a podcast. What was it like in the early days? What was it like getting to grips with stuff?
God, it feels like a while back. I have to make things fun, I probably won't do them. You don't do things if they're boring, do you? So I think right back at the start, I mean, the way you deliver training and the way you come across, that's all pretty fun, and it makes it feel like it's possible. And then, I'm a very practical person, and I have to learn through doing. And so setting myself, and I'm very good at just creating things for me and other people to learn from. And so doing that Women Who Rock radio show really helped me learn a few things. And like I say, get used to the software, get used to different things, get used to, and knowing actually I haven't got the hours in the day to do this stuff, which is why, when we decided actually rather than radio, we want to create podcasts and we want someone to help us. So it helped make decisions about, you don't have to do it all yourself. It is actually it is very easy. The software to edit things and all this stuff, it is easy, but to give things that extra polish, or to just shortcut things and get the reach needed, we didn't know anything about. I mean, I'm useless, these things, I don't have an Apple phone, I don't have a Spotify account, so I'm like out the door before you even get started, but I'm not, because I found you, and, with certain boxes ticked, and Audio Boom, which is, the site that we use to host something, it just pops out there, it's people find it is magic. So learning all of these sorts of tips and tricks from you has been really helpful on that. And anything that means that we don't have to think about it or do it. When you're a small organization, you're busy creating social change, doing something over here, getting somebody to help you with these things is that's been invaluable to us. And making it fun. I think we run events anyway, we run lots of events. I'm used to, and the team, we design, short, sharp events. And for us, designing a podcast is a bit like designing an event. And so it's that bits, we find our speakers, we decide the themes, we pull it all together, and you facilitate in an event. But whereas for other people, it might be quite a different experience. If they're just interviewing people one-on-one, it's about depth, and it's about storytelling. It's about listening to somebody's journey. And it's just, people come at it from different ways, but we're very much the event curator. And I think that does come across in our podcast, and you forever saying, you're trying to pack too much in here. So, but we listen. And I think it's just because we're trying to help people, share their tips really. And there's so much, there's a lot of richness for sure in the messages, I think, through. And for us, that's what keeps it fun, it keeps it interesting, and it's giving other people the opportunity to pitch in, and our podcasts have definitely enabled that. I think in every podcast that we've done, there's about 5 to 10 people that have been involved in terms of, what gets said and what gets done. And, that's been good. And I know we've taken our sort of foot off the pedal really with doing podcasts in the last year, because we've had lots of real world stuff and lots of programs to run, but we've definitely got lots of people in our networks who want to do more podcasts. And I think we're now just getting a toe back in the pool, aren't we, to start to create more sets. And I think listening to what people want to hear is really important.
Mm.
Ours is a niche podcast for a niche audience to some degree. I think it's good for anybody working in the social enterprise VCSE world to listen to, because it's, it would be relevant. But I think our target audience are the women who get involved.
Yeah.
They tell us very clearly, what's important to them. And I think whereas the first series has been all about enterprise and social enterprise and taking people through the kind of building blocks to helping them to do that, there's a lot more of people's journeys, I think, to share now. And there's a lot more around specific themes around financial resilience, around trying to set up a social venture living with chronic health conditions, other things. And I think you can go on all sorts of courses or go to all sorts of events, and it's about networking, it's about this and it's about that. I think what we can do is talk about the things people don't talk about, or that wouldn't ordinarily come up unless you're in a room full of women. Peel out actually some quite unusual topics, and that that's what we'll hopefully be looking at with the groups that we've got.
And this is all about listening to your audience and what they want as well. And you get to listen to your audience and your network every day, so you're on the pulse, for a better word, a phrase that in what your audience want to hear about. I've got 2 more questions, and remember, we've got 12 more minutes left. So if you want to ask Nickala or myself a question, then wherever you're watching, I think possibly LinkedIn will let you comment and question. Just to say, we've had a comment from Una and saying, "Well done, Nickala, well deserved the award," and she's enjoying the podcast, which is great to hear.
Oh, we'll see you soon.
So, funding.
Funding.
You build podcasts into your funding applications now.
Yeah. At certain times, and so I think we probably used our own resources to create the first couple from memory way back when, and then because it's a learning tool and it's a learning resource, or it's marketing and promotion, or it's building somebody else's skills, or it's amplifying voices, or it's creating a stakeholder event that you're listening to. There are lots of creative ways of describing how you want to capture information. And if a podcast's the perfect vehicle to do that, then, why wouldn't you tuck it in your funding bid? So, in funding bids and in some of our sort of contracts for training programs and things, we've built in costs to do this. We haven't gone down sponsorship routes or CSR or any of that, which is probably why we've not done more, if I'm honest. We've been bound by what's been in bids and so forth. But more often than not, lots of these funds that are out there are quite thematic anyway. They're either about you evolving what you're doing and capacity building your organisation, like an Awards for All. And, Awards for All, the lottery fund up to 10,000 can help you do a whole manner of things. It's an amazing fund. And so building stronger communities, supporting people at the earlier stages, and, building strong partnerships. And these are all things that you can achieve, with podcasting, enhancing skills and learning and all this. So, we've certainly had podcasting in things like a generic sort of overall bid. We did work with the WEA through some European money, and that was, again, lots of learning and education and creating evergreen content so that people could continue to learn. So that, again, was why podcasts were built into some of that. We have backing and support from people like Manchester City Council and NatWest, and they've been very flexible sort of supporters of ours. And, it's quite easy for us to make a case as to why podcasting is a useful thing, particularly if we're building other people's skills, and particularly if it's reaching audiences that wouldn't ordinarily get to stuff. So I suppose I'm just saying you can build it into any kind of thing. And for those times where there's a fund that comes up and, you know, it might be about inclusion, or it might be about health and well-being, or it might be about the environment, you know, maybe there's podcasts or there's stories or there's learning to share in those themes where, you know, we'll apply for a fund and because it's thematic and it's helping us to research, develop, or do something differently, or corral a whole bunch of people that we're already working with, and boost something. Yeah. Again, we've took podcasting into things like that. So that's how we've come to be, you know, coming to do a couple around building financial resilience, you know, post-COVID, and also thinking about how people with more sort of complex health needs or mental health needs might need support differently when it comes to doing what they're doing. Those specialist funds that have been out there will help us to create new content on those topics.
Very interesting. Very, very useful stuff there. I know that's the funding question is a common question, and then how do you ask for funding for podcasts? But there are ways to.
Yeah, and we've not done crowdfunds in a while, but, you know, again, crowdfunds are usually pretty flexible in terms of what you can spend the money on. And as long as you set out your stall to say, we're raising money to do this, this, and this, and a part of it, we're going to involve our community in creating a podcast or two to do whatever, you know, there's all sorts. And I've probably got a lot to learn on the kind of the sponsored side, or, you know, advertising side of podcasts. But my time's better spent elsewhere than going chasing that kind of stuff in my head. You know, I can get it quicker in another route, which is probably why I haven't gone down that path. But I've seen people be successful with that approach as well.
Let's talk about numbers then, shall we?
Try.
What does success look like to you in podcast land?
I mean, I just like all those shiny faces. That's not helpful. When we look on the thing and we've got these 12 or so very diverse, brilliant women, the face of our podcast, to me, the fact that we've had, you know, around 10 people showcased and amplified their voices and stories of all these different characters out there, that's one level of success for me, you know. And the range of, I guess it's like latent talent and, you know, untold stories and unsung heroes. To me, these women are all absolute legends in their own right. So why shouldn't they be the poster girls of these things, and get their message out there? They know far more than most infrastructure organisations, you know, and we are one ourselves. But, you know, they're the coalface of it, and they've got such great learning to share and such brilliant inspiration and motivation to give. For me, that's the success of some of what we've done with the podcast. But in terms of numbers and so on, for us and other people listening to this, you know, they're used to seeing, you know, we've had like 1,000 views of this or a million listens of that. I think across our suite of podcasts, we've had about 3,000 listens, which in my world is quite a good thing.
Absolutely.
I mean, they've only been out for about 2 years.
Yeah,
so, you know, was when we first started doing them, give or take 2 years or so. For me, that, you know, I'm relatively pleased with that. I think we probably could push these things a lot more. It's not about rostering it in, but for me, you know, when I was looking back at the things, I think per podcast, you know, I think the lowest amount of listens we've had on any given podcast has been about 150. The highest has been nearly 400. Small numbers, but when you imagine we only have about 30 people going on a program at a time, and you know, we're quite intensive with our support. We don't run massive conferences to bring people to. I mean, we could, but, you know, we work intensively with people in smaller groups. So for me, you know, the numbers that we've got, I'm happy with. I think the funders that we have will be happy, you know, with those.
I don't think those numbers are small, because I like to say that if you imagine,
small, don't they? You know, and you've got your son who's listening to flipping YouTube nonsense, and it's like you're like.
But think of, you know, 3,000 people you probably wouldn't have reached without the podcast.
I think so, yeah, for sure. Amazing. I mean, whilst some of the people listening are people in our network, kind of catching up and recapping, and a big part of the way we work is about connection and collaboration and building trust. And, for people to feel that they can stay connected to something, even if they can't get to stuff, is a really big thing. I think, over and above numbers, it's that built trust and it's that consistency. I'm all about consistency where we can make that happen. And, we haven't done a podcast for probably 6 months, but that consistency of having that set there that people can, dip in and out of and know that there's others coming up and that they can help us shape the format and shape the topics for this stuff is a big part of the success. And, reach as well. I mean, I was laughing before, I had a quick snoop as kind of where in the world are people listening. And the majority of our work is predominantly in around Greater Manchester in the Northwest. But looking at this, we've got a chunk of people in Edinburgh been listening lately, a chunk of people in London, and even in Pontypridd, which I'm guessing is Wales. So, people are listening all over, and, that's great, really. You can certainly, without realizing it, create an audience for what you're doing or an interest much further afield than you might initially be working.
And again, I think some of that as well is down to the title of the podcast. It's very searchable.
Yes, I guess, yes. And that was down to you. I don't name anything. I didn't name Flourish. I didn't name my own child. I left that to other people. So I'd be guided by what people think's best. So we're very pleased with that.
Finally, Nickala, any top tips for a not-for-profit who's on the fence about starting a podcast but are not quite sure whether to take the plunge?
I'd just say, what's keeping you on the fence, really? Is it time? Is it money? Is it lack of knowledge and skills? Come and have a chat to us or to one of the many people that we've supported who are doing podcasts, mainly through Vic and through, they've either built their own skills and they're doing their own, or, they've not got that time and they want to, delegate the task. But get off the fence would be my thing. And it's a bit like, it's a daft analogy, but I didn't see the point of Twitter years ago, and some people might still not see the point of Twitter, to be fair. But it was like, well, why would I do that? Who's going to care what I've got to say? And then even when I got a Twitter handle, it took me nearly 2 years to actually put a tweet out. People wouldn't believe that. You see how prolific I am on Twitter, but that's the thing, isn't it? It's overcoming that. Who cares about what I've got to say? And I think you need to not worry about that. You don't care about, for me, and you might not like me saying this a bit, we don't care. We weren't thinking about the listeners at first. This was about a creative exercise. It's about telling stories, capturing information, doing something fun, learning how to create audio for us, selfishly, putting this piece together. And if people listen to it, great. We thought it might be interesting for some people. Just give it a go. Do it for yourselves. See it as it's like a creative exercise and a way of bringing people together to talk and to share. And it doesn't have to be overly well thought through, in my mind. I mean, there's some brilliant formatting and there's some fantastic editing people like Vic can do, but just having a chat around a kitchen table and having it recorded, depending on the topic and what gets said, and making sure people agree that you're allowed to broadcast this stuff. There's so much there's so much crap on TV and there's so much junk in our film and TV world right now that actually listening to what real people have to say, I think there's a real market for. And I say that being somebody who's finally seen the light and started listening to podcasts 2 years late, but actually, sat in listening to a colleague of ours who's done a podcast lately about her life and what's led her to be setting what she's doing, was just brilliant. Best hour and a half I've had for a while, listening to something, because the telly and the news and the this and the that, I think if you people on the fence and they're thinking, who's going to care what I've got to say? I think that, people will be surprised. So find a format that works and find a friend like Vic and get on with it.
What a great way to finish. So get off the fence. Why are you on the fence? Get starting your podcast now. So thank you for watching this edition of Grab the Mic Live. A massive thank you to Nickala for sharing her time and wisdom with us. This whole thing will be available to watch again on YouTube in a couple of weeks' time, along with some other great conversations on there with people including Made by Mortals and their Armchair Adventures podcast, to the logbooks from the LGBTQ+ Switchboard charity. You can find out more about what we do at Mike Media by searching Mike Media UK everywhere. Now, if you've enjoyed watching this, do me one favour, share it with someone who you think will love, benefit, and quite like our little chitter chatter. Until next time, see you later. Bye.
Thank you. See you soon.